Scottish Folk and Fairy Tales, The Fairy Boy of Leith. The worthy Captain George Burton communicated to Richard Bovet, a gentleman, author of an interesting work entitled Pandemonium, or The Devil's Cloister Opened, following the singular account of a lad called the Fairy Boy of Leith, who it seemed acted as a drummer to the elves, who weekly held rendezvous in Calton Hill, near Edinburgh. About 15 years since having left the business that detained me for some time in Leith, which is near Edinburgh, in the kingdom of Scotland, I often met some of my acquaintance at a certain house there, where we used to drink a glass of wine for our refection. The woman who kept the house was of an honest reputation among the neighbours, which had given me more attention to what she told me one day about a fairy boy, as they called him, who lived about that town. She had given me so strange an account of him that I desired her that I might see him in the first company, which she promised. And not long after passing that way, she told me there was a fairy boy. But a little before I came by, and casting her eye into the street, she said, "Look you, sir, yonder, there he is at play with the other boys." And designing him to me, I went by smooth words and a piece of money, and got him to come into the house with me, where, in presence of diverse people, I demanded him several astrological questions, which he answered with great subtlety. And though all his discourse carried out with a cunning much above his years, which did not seem to exceed 10 or 11, he seemed to make a motion like drumming upon the table with his fingers, upon which I asked him whether he could beat a drum. To which he replied, "Yes, sir, as well as any man in Scotland. For every Thursday night I beat all points to a sort of people that used to meet under yonder hill," pointing to the great hill between Edinburgh and Leith. "How, boy?" I asked. "What company have you there?" There are, sir," he said, "a great company of both men and women, and they are entertained in many sorts of music, besides my drum. They have all, besides, plenty of variety of meats and wines, and many times we are carried into Holland or France in a night, and then to return again, whilst we are there to enjoy all pleasures of the country that it affords." I demanded of him how he got under that hill, to which he replied, "There are a great pair of gates that open to them, through which are invisible to others, and then within the large rooms, as well accommodated as the most in Scotland." I then asked him how I should know what he said to be true, and upon which he told me he would read my fortune, saying I should have two wives, and that he saw forms of them sitting on my shoulders, and that both would be very handsome women. As he was thus speaking, a woman of the neighbourhood coming into the room demanded of him what her fortune should be, and he told her that she should have two sons before she was married, and that put her into such a rage that she desired not to hear the rest. The woman of the house told me that all people in Scotland could not keep him from his rendezvous on Thursday night, upon which, by promising him some more money, I got a promise to meet me in the same place in the following afternoon, which was the Thursday following, and so so that I could dismissed this interesting thing of that time. The boy came again, and at the place and time appointed, and I had prevailed upon him with some friends to continue with me, if possible, to prevent his moving that night. He was placed between us, and answered many questions until about 11 o'clock. He was got away unperceived by the company, and I, suddenly missing him, hastened to my door, and took behold of him, and so returned him into the same room. We all watched him, and of a sudden he was again out of doors. I followed him close, and made noise in the street, and as if I had been set upon. But from that time I could never see him again.